Hi there. Litcoin has finally confirmed it has re-entered accumulation cycle like a couple of other altcoins. So let's look through the Wyckoff lens to see where Litecoin is at and where it's heading. If you're new to my sessions, here are the 3 key points that are covered during the session. So let's start with the weekly chart of Litecoin. Last week we were still asking the question, is Litecoin getting into preliminary support stage, or was that just a sign of weakness? And this week's move, even though there's still about 53 hours left for this week's candlestick, I would say it's pretty much confirmed that it has re-entered the preliminary support zone, similar to what happened back in March this year. So it tested the orange key level of $79, got people buying in, then supporting at the current level at around $83.50. However, this may not be the end of it. Okay, when we get to the daily chart, we'll see more details. So the question is, if this has already entered accumulation, how far the selling climax would go, right? So optimistic thinking is that looking at the selling climax back in April this year, and also the selling climax back in July last year, plus this selling climax back in September 2023, which I haven't marked, now I mark it for you, all points to the level, the red key level of $62. However, that's, having said that, that's not the lowest point for those accumulation cycles. So at one point last year in August, it tested as low as close to $50. And if we look further, October 22nd, sometime between May, June time to October, it tested levels to almost $40. Okay, it's not that we are outside of downside risk, let's put it this way. The downside risk is still immense, even though we've got some pretty good references from 2003 and 2004, which stayed around the $62 level, and October 10th, ended above the 62, which are some relieving signs. That's why I said the optimistic scenario. However, the pessimistic scenario, at least if we look at 2002, 2003, that went to somewhere near $72. I'm talking about the close of the candlestick, not the lowest point they tested. Lowest point was 40, but this at around 70 was the level that they bottomed out, let's put it this way, during that particular period, almost half a year, from June 2022 to November 2022. Alright, so this is, let's say, the pessimistic scenario for this round. If the price continues to climb lower along the downward channel. Okay, so this blue box over here, if the price continues to slip, especially it's trading at the weaker side, that means the lower half of the box. Okay, the tendency of it to continue to go, seeking the actual bottom, is right there. Okay, so let's look at the daily chart. So this line is supposed to be the center line for the box, which last week we adjusted a bit, but since the box trajectory has slightly changed, it's time to adjust the center line as well. So the use of this center line is to indicate to us, besides the bottom and the ceiling of the channel, the price tends to bounce among these 3 lines. So you see where this upthrust was, it bounced back from the center line, the LPSYs as well, and then from this yellow key level of $100, that sign of weakness bounced to the ceiling and get rejected back to the selling climax, and second test both tested the bottom of the channel box, and then back to the center line for a sign of strength, and also leads a dual resistance with the yellow key level back to the lower edge of the channel, and also the support that the orange key level provided. And that's how it works. Okay, basically along these three lines and certain interactions in between with the key levels. So when I said it's trading along the weaker side, it means things below the center line. Okay, a week and a half ago, we've got a chance to go above the center line, meaning if it stayed above the yellow key level, the chance of getting a trend change from a downward trend will get higher when we get closer and closer to the end of the year. But obviously we're too far from that, and the entire market is just driving most of the things down. And that's where we are now, right above the 79 orange key level. Found some people buying in. At that point, you see this long wick. That's people pushing the price up. Okay, trying to push it back to the white intermediate level of near $88. Okay, but then we know the orange was where some previous accumulation was. So I would expect it to come back to the orange key level, to test it a couple of times, at least a few days before it rebounds, unless like I said in other sessions, that some crazily good news like the inverse of tariff comes out, then we may be able to see some crazy spike. But not until then. The tendency is for this to continue to trade along this lower half of the channel. It may bounce along these key levels, but eventually it'll go test the lower key levels. Alright, so 6247 are the two key numbers, and they are basically referencing what happened during the accumulation from 2002 all the way through 2003, 2004. So each of the year has its own accumulation, and they point to these two levels that we can take reference. So let's hope for Litcoin to trade back towards the stronger side of the downward channel. May it be sideways or even slightly downwards. At least it's a point where we will be able to see some light, like we're getting to the end of the tunnel, and that's when it potentially shows the selling climax in the weekly time frame and starts accumulating once again, and head towards the next distribution cycle. So thanks for joining me today, and see you very soon. Bye.